Some memorable moments, I would say I'll first start with one that was with Lil Nas X. So when I was working at Columbia, I was hired to be a marketing director. Felicia Fant, she was the co-head of urban marketing. So we were on the run of Old Town Road. And in 2020, he had a Doritos commercial for the Super Bowl, right? So we went to the Super Bowl, we were in Miami, and we pulled up, got out the car, and we were waiting for a cart, right? One of those golf carts. We were waiting for a while. And so we're like, well, there's a golf cart, there's another golf cart, like, where's ours? So we can go inside of the stadium. And so at some point, Lil Nas X was like, that's where we have to go? Because it's, we're in the parking lot and you can see the stadium. And he ended up saying, well, let's just go ahead and walk there. And so we said, skip the golf cart. We went ahead and walked. But as we're walking, it was like storms of people following us, like wanting to meet him, wanting to stop him. And they just kind of went wild. I hadn't seen it before with any other artist to that magnitude, to be able to really stop people in their tracks and want to follow him from every single point that he was going to. And so we're going through security, we're going through the concourse, we're going up to the suite, and people are like, can I take a photo? Can I have this autograph? And honestly, the great part about it was that he did stop and talk to all of those people, as crazy as it was. And there's our security who's like, hey, we got to keep going. We got to keep going. He was like, no, I want to go ahead and take a photo with his fans. And so that was a really memorable moment for me when it comes to really just an artist and their fans and their interactions with each other. To be able to see that in today's day, we used to see those things with Michael Jackson. We used to see those with big stars, and he was just that big star of our time. And so that's one of my memorable moments, because it was a big year for him, and to have that Super Bowl commercial, many artists don't get that chance. So that was one. And then the other memorable moment was also in my time at Columbia. I was working with Polo G, and he had just put out his album, The GOAT, Polo G from Chicago. And, with him, we had ended up going to the NBA All-Star Weekend. And so he just released an album. We come out here to Chicago for All-Star, and when I say he was just that hometown hero, that was something that we were okay, he's this new artist, he's a conscious rapper, and he has this hit song pop out that really kicked things off. But then at the same time, here he is with this new album, and he has so many accolades with his projects. And so just seeing how much the city loved him was really just inspiring, because he wanted to come back and make sure that he had a presence in his hometown. And here's the album to go. He loves Michael Jordan. We're in Chicago. It just completely made sense. And so when we're here, there was billboards around the city. I had went ahead and worked with him and his management to go ahead and say, hey, let's identify all the different places. So we started out with, right when you got off, your plane in the airport, you see Polo G welcomes you to Chicago, right? So we hit that at the baggage claim. You hit that messaging when you're on your way on the freeway. I remember we were out to eat, and it was this restaurant owner. He came out and welcomed us. Owners will typically do, our managers. And so we're saying, oh, we're visiting, we're here for Polo G. And he's like, wait a second, is that the kid that I saw on the billboard? He was really impressed. And so just to see how many people that touched and saw that was just you can feel the presence. And then what we did is we went to 2 different high schools that he attended. He's from the north side of Chicago. And we just went ahead and surprised the students. And so that, to me, just to see how excited those kids were to see their artist that comes from their hometown and has reached that level of success really makes a difference in terms of like inspiring the youth. And so those are two, I would say, memorable moments because it's like artists and their fans together. Yeah, here's a couple funny stories that I have with artists. The first one I'll tell you about is with Too Short. So I was in college. I was at Oregon State University working with a few guys. It was probably like five other guys that would do concerts on campus. And like I would throw the parties I would throw the parties at the school. They were throwing concerts. We linked up together and we're like, okay, let's go ahead and book Too Short. And so the reason why we booked Too Short and we're doing this in particular concert is because a friend of ours had actually passed away from cardiac arrest. He was a football player, and so that was really heavy. And we said, okay, well, he's an important person to our community here at the school. We want to go ahead and do something for his family and in his memory. His name was Fred Thompson. And so we got in contact with his parents and we booked Too Short. Fred was from the Bay. Short is from the Bay. And so I had ended up being the person to pick Short up from the airport. And so I'm like, I don't know, maybe 18, 19, probably like 19, I want to say. And I end up booking, or we end up booking, because I just picked the car up. I picked up one of those all-white Enterprise vans. And so I'm driving from Corvallis, Oregon, to Portland, Oregon, which is about an hour and a half drive. I go ahead, pick him up, and pick Fred's parents up. So it's me, Too Short, his DJ, his manager, Fred's parents. I ended up picking up my sister along the way too. She actually had like a softball game, and I was like, "Hey, you got to come with me because I need she's like my right hand, you know. She's always there for everything for me." And so I pick her up, stop by the house. Too Short still in the van. Fred's parents are in the van, and we end up driving all the way back to Oregon State. Now, I'm like in the car, and there was another young girl with us too. I didn't know her prior, but the guys that I've been working with was like, "Oh, here's an assistant. Like, here's someone that can really help you get some of these things done." And, you know, she had ended up bringing some stuff onto the van, and I won't talk about that. But I was just like, wait a second, you can't do this. And I was so pissed off because I'm like, I'm in the car, I'm driving this artist. Also, too, I'm in this van that's like shaking because the wind, and like it was probably like a 12-person van, and I'm like, I can't believe I'm driving Too Short, and these are people like that I'm responsible for. And so we ended up getting there, but it was funny. Too Short, I mean, he was great. He was talking to my sister, and she was playing Angry Birds, like when it was like a hot thing at the time. He's like, "What are you playing?" She's like, "Angry Birds." And he was like, "Oh, I want to play," you know? So like those things were just like funny moments to be like, I'm literally driving Short in this like 12-person passenger van for an hour and a half to and from this small town in Corvallis, Oregon, you know? And so he went ahead and came out. It was like everyone had a ball. Everyone had a great time. But it was a benefit concert to go ahead and raise funds for Fred and his family. I mean, when I was driving that van, there was so much stress and anxiety. Like I too didn't know what exactly anxiety was, but I'm like the pressure of like, these people are commodities. They're real people in my hands, and who I'm responsible for. And yeah, the van was huge. I had actually had a Hyundai Elantra car, like, and so I was used to that small impact, like that small compact type of a car, and wasn't used to like, you know, here's, you know, 7, 8 people in the car with me. But fast forward to like another moment in comparison. So instead of, in comparison to that moment with Short, me and that team had booked Big Crit and Ninth Wonder and Rhapsody for a separate show. And so I learned my lesson, because the first time I had brought somebody in the car with me that I didn't know. That's one lesson, like know who's around you, know exactly like, what company you're keeping. Because you don't want to get into some issues and troubles with the people that are around you. And so this other time that I ended up going to pick up Big Crit and his manager and his DJ, I drove my small Hyundai Elantra. And so I didn't have to get a big, van. It didn't call for that. But I ended up picking them up, and we're on our way out of the airport. And then they get a call from Ninth Wonder. And he's like, oh, pull up to Nike. And so I'm like, okay, well, we have sound check, and we still have to drive an hour and a half. And so, but we go to Nike, we go to the headquarters, like they should definitely experience it. And so we get there, and Ninth is there with Rhapsody, and, Big Crit greets them. We all say hello. I actually had ended up working prior to with some of those guys on the Nike team. I was part of their Nike design program. I was in this organization called Self-Enhancement Incorporated out of Portland. And so they had that program. So I'm seeing familiar faces, and they're like, oh yeah, Sierra, like we're going to go to the show too. But they're like, but come inside. So we go into not only the employee store and do some shopping, but we go into the actual headquarters, and we end up sitting down like at a boardroom table, and they start talking about like, oh, ideas and plans and what can we do for Black History Month, and like, how can we collaborate? And so for me, that was like, at the time, because I was still in college, like my first time being in like an actual meeting in like, the corporate life, right? I was familiar with those guys, and they had taught me a lot through the program that I was at through Nike. But honestly, like it was my first time experiencing like their brainstorming. They would teach us how to brainstorm, right? And so we're sitting there, and I'm looking at the time, and I'm like, you guys, like sound check is coming up. But the conversation was so good. And then I'm like looking at Crit's manager, like, we gotta go. But no one like knew how to kind of end the conversation, because they're just like everybody's spitballing ideas. But eventually I had to say like, hey guys, I'm sorry to interrupt. Like, we just have to like end up heading that way, because we're going to be late, And so we ended up being a bit late, but not as late as we could have been had I not just kind of said, hey, we gotta cut this. So that was definitely, I would say, like a funny like moment. Definitely in my earlier days of working in music. I'm Sierra Lever, and you're locked in to 24/7 HH.